Welcome to our community conversation about supporting local survivor leadership and local survivors. I'm Lucy Bloom, Executive Director of Veronica's Voice, and we are so excited today to have as our speakers Kristy Childs, who is the founder of Veronica's Voice. Kristy survived 24 years of exploitation starting at the age of 12, and on her journey to freedom, she was making a path for as many women to come along with her. You all have read history books about people like this, and we're so honored that Kristy would spend this noon hour with us. She founded Veronica's Voice in 2000. She has received many awards at national and as well as state and local levels. So I won't go into all of those, but you can learn more about her on our website, veronicasvoice.org. We also have with us Terry Forliti, who also went through the very same horrific experience of surviving life on the streets, being commercially sexually exploited. And in that very same, with that very same dedication, as she was finding her way to freedom, she was also dedicating herself to learning how to serve those who are marginalized in our community, and got her degrees to support that dedication. And she is currently serving as executive director of Breaking Free. She is a second generation survivor leader there in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And we're just so excited to have her with us as well. They're both going to be sharing with us, we called this a candid conversation today, because they're going to be sharing with us some of the realities of the challenges of creating specialized services when you're up against how giving people that have very little options, very little control of their own lives, giving them access and giving them these opportunities. It takes very specialized services that don't always exist within our current systems of care. So these are people that have literally not only scraped nickels together, but they have created things that did not yet exist. And so we're so honored to have them share with us some of their leadership journey, and then both of them still being in the trenches of providing services decades into this. What are some of the current needs in our communities to come alongside as survivors, and they're going to boil it down to us in a way that we can understand how we can directly be involved. Sometimes this issue just feels so overwhelming and so large, but when we can bring it down to a relationship that we can build with a survivor leader in our community, and that we can come alongside an agency that is already dedicated to doing this work and has experience and expertise, it makes it more doable. So we're very excited to have Ashley Chapman, who is the founder and president of Engage Together, facilitating our conversation today. Most of you have joined us in the past, so you guys already know Ashley, so I don't need to spend a lot of time sharing about her work, but she is a trailblazer in her own right, helping communities to be able to come together, and instead of recreating things, coming alongside what is existing and helping it be as impactful as it can be. So you guys are in great company today for this noon hour. And with that, Ashley, I'll let you take it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Lucy, and welcome everyone. We're really super thrilled about this conversation today, and we're grateful for our guests. And what we're going to cover this hour especially is a continuance of the conversations we've been having throughout the year. And if you've missed any of those deep dive conversations on what communities can do to help end and prevent human trafficking, then go to veronicasvoice.org/rotary-swarm, and you can catch up on all of the deep dive conversations we've had today around vulnerabilities that are driving human trafficking in Kansas City, about labor trafficking issues, reforms, and demand, and so many other topics. And soon, come in just a few short weeks, we'll be producing an action kit where we're baking in all of these learnings and handing it off to you to now execute that plan based on true insights into what's actually happening and what can be done. But today, we're going to really focus in on hearing from women who have been pioneering efforts to support survivors in your city and in our country and in our world. And we want to listen. I think you're going to hear information that's going to be quite eye-opening about this issue, about the real needs of survivors. If all we're learning about how to combat human trafficking is from films we're watching or from social media posts that are going viral, then we are really missing the reality of this issue and the very real, tangible ways that you are interacting with this every single day in your communities, and opportunities to provide support. But those opportunities might look different than perhaps you're imagining. And so today we want the call to action is just listen closely, learn as much as you can from the perspectives that are going to be shared today. And then we are going to be hopefully helping you understand and giving guidance to, and maybe even some immediate, maybe short-term, maybe long-term opportunities for you to lean in to carefully considered, helpful, not harmful actions that are going to improve the outcomes for victims of human trafficking and walk alongside survivors so they can pursue everything they're dreaming of in their lives. So welcome to our speakers. I'm going to hand it over. So the way this is going to roll is we're going to give Terry and Kristy a moment to just share from their heart what they do today, what they're stewarding every day, and their why behind all of that. And they're going to take a minute to share that. And then we're going to have an open roundtable with Terry and Kristy and Lucy and myself to walk through, okay, what collectively do we want to share about what are the current challenges for survivors and communities, and even challenges of community engagement alongside survivors. Just take a look at that for a moment. Move to the progress that we're excited to see happening in Kansas City and nationwide. And then what's on the wish list for things that need to happen that likely almost everyone in this call has an opportunity to support. So really looking forward to diving in. So we'll get started. Terry, we're going to go to you first. Thank you so much for joining us. And please share whatever you'd love to share about who you are, what you do, and why you do it.
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here. I've known about Veronica's Voice for many years now. I had the privilege to meet Kristy probably about, 7-8 years ago now? Something like that. My mentor, the founder of Breaking Free, Vanita Carter, brought a number of us down there, and we did a panel. I believe it was at the University of Missouri or University of Kansas at Missouri. And I don't remember a whole lot about that, Kristy, to be honest with you. It was a long time ago. It was one of my first panels, but this is what it said to me, that my voice mattered, that I was important enough to leave the state of Minnesota without having to have sex, to stay in a hotel somewhere, like, people do, without any transactions, to go down and have a continental breakfast, to go spend some time at Veronica's Voice. It was the first time anyone looked at me like I wasn't just a hoe. I had more value than that. And that meant a lot. That meant a whole lot. So that empowering thing. So I've known about Kristy. I met her. They were fantastic hosts. And so all these years, she's always been in the back of my heart as somebody that lifts up survivors. And that's very important. So another reason why I'm excited to talk to you today is because Minnesota has been working very, very hard for very many years on this issue. We call it the movement. And for those of us that are survivors, the movement means having the ability to exit the life without a criminal background. I have 4 felonies. I'll talk about that. But being able to exit without being arrested, but keeping the purchasers accountable and charging them, and the pimps also. It's called the equality model. And someone will probably talk about that a little bit more. But those of us that are survivors, that's what we are advocating for. You may hear some people out there, I'm not going to go into this real long, but you're going to hear some people talking about sex positive, that we should be able to buy and sell ourselves, that this isn't, we're harming ourselves if we're not able to, pimps aren't able to sell us and Johns aren't able to buy us. Well, first of all, that's called commodification. That's buying and selling someone. So if you're cool with that, then we don't really have anywhere to go. But So we're talking about objectification and then commodification, and that's never okay to sell another human being. But I want you to know that I was not born into this. Many of my staff members were. We are a survivor. Not only am I the executive director, a survivor, but I have 15 of my 20 staff are survivors as well. Now, did they all come with skill sets? No. But what I do want to also mention, many of them are Black and brown skin, and that's important as well. We need to match the population that we're serving, both on our board as well as people. How would you feel that if you went to a place and it was everyone that worked there was a different culture? You might feel a little bit uncomfortable. So we make sure that those needs are met. I'm getting a little bit off track. So, but this is another reason why I wanted to talk to y'all. Like I said, I wasn't born into this. My father was actually an endodontist. And I grew up in a pretty nice family. I was, however, like many of us, I was sexually abused. I was raped by my boss at 15. And I'm telling you this because this is a real common scenario of how the vulnerabilities come to play with trafficking and grooming, recruitment, and initiation. So oftentimes we're abused as children. And I didn't know it was rape at the time. All I knew is he was 28 and I was 15. And I wasn't trying to have intercourse with somebody. And I didn't know what was going on. I didn't tell my parents, and I didn't think it was rape because I didn't scream and yell and claw his eyes out during the process. I froze. I wasn't aware of fight, flight, and freeze back then. All I knew is that something was happening, and I'm embarrassed, and I don't understand why. I'd never kissed a boy before. I was not prepared for any of this. So I held on to it, and it manifested into a lot of different things over the years. I was able to hold a couple jobs. I actually had a real good job at United Healthcare. I was the 35th employee, and I was at the right place at the right time. But I was also doing a lot of cocaine back then, because that's the way that I was masking that confusion of what happened earlier. So you get into addiction and all kinds of other things, but I'm going to move forward. When I came to breaking free, and I know that there's women and men and boys and girls in Kansas City. Some of the folks that are going to come to Lucy and Kristy are going to say, I'm not in prostitution. I'm not being trafficked. They're not going to know what that means. They're going to think of Liam Neeson with Taken or something, or which is completely false, or Julia Roberts, which is also completely 100% false. So I was here for about 2 years because I knew I jumped in and out of cars and had sex for stuff, but I didn't own any high heel shoes or fishnet stockings. Are you kidding me? I'm not walking up and down some of the hoe strolls, as they call it, some of these neighborhoods. I don't even see neighborhoods like that anymore, but so I'm not that thing. I'm not that person. I'm not that. No. So I was in denial because it didn't match my perception of what exploitation meant. There's no Huggy Bear, big pimp with coats. Well, there actually were, but Kristy laughs, but there were, and there still are, but not really. But you know what I'm saying? This comes to people. People use us. They see the vulnerability, and that's where this happens. That unaddressed childhood sexual assault is very, very, very common. And then how to deal with it. So there's just so much to talk about in a short amount of time. So I just want you to know that. Keep that in the back of your mind, that the folks that Kristy and Lucy are dealing with, that they're seeing may not know that they have been exploited. So one of the things we do is we walk alongside our folks and we talk about that exploitation. We don't you can say it wasn't your fault, baby, all day long, but until they realize it, until they can connect the dots, until they understand those interdictions and what happened historically to get them where they are, that's going to manifest as shame and guilt. So it's very important that we walk along as a survivor and not to get that secondhand trauma, but to walk alongside our folks, our friends, and to make them, to have them understand, okay, so, maybe it's a Gantt chart type thing, or a outline, where were you? Where did, what's your youngest memory of exploitation? And then we talk about that. We talk about what the power and control wheel is. We talk about all of that. So to provide those services to others is key. It's key. Another thing that we have challenges with is, so my biggest challenge in getting out of the life was not having a place to go. I had to go home to my pimp every night, and or the hotel or wherever it was we were, because you have to move around a lot when you're in the life, because you're a moving target. So I didn't have anywhere to go. It wasn't until he got arrested and I was doing about 4 or 5 months in jail, and I found out about breaking free, and that was my window to get out. But oftentimes folks don't have that. If I didn't have a place to go after I got out of jail, I'd probably still be there, and I wouldn't have been able to raise my daughter, who's now 19, that I did have by my pimp. And those are challenges also. How do we raise our babies when we may have had them through with our perpetrators, but I was fortunate that eventually mine did get out of the life. And he's had a really good relationship with his daughter. We spend time in Memphis. He's from Memphis. She knows his family. She doesn't know about all the exploitation. She doesn't need to know all that. But she knows that, we were in the life. There was a lot of drug use. There was a lot of crime, things like that. So how do you navigate that as a survivor? What do you want people to know? What I'm sharing with you today, is this the same stuff that I want out there 10 years from now? It has to be, because it's going to be recorded. You know what I mean? So those are some of the challenges that we have. How can we preserve our story? How can we make sure that other folks understand what we went through and what some of those needs are, without putting ourselves out there, without that hurt? I know one time I did a presentation at a seminar at a suburb here in the Twin Cities, and somebody, the newspaper, it was a mayor breakfast. And the next day, a newspaper article came out, and it said that my father had sexually abused me. He never sexually abused me, and I never said that. But that was out there, and that was very harmful. I had to run to his house immediately, and we were both crying, and it's some horrible stuff. So some of the challenges that we see, okay, so for instance, those 4 felonies I have, we had an expungement. Our district attorney has this fabulous expungement opportunity right now, where it takes about, Kristy, I would say 3 minutes for 3 different counties. And that's, you don't go to court. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to do anything. They do all the work. So you put in your county, whatever the county is, what your name is, your date of birth, your aliases. And if it's one of those charges that can be expunged, those low-lying crimes that we commit because we don't want to have sex 5 to 10 times today. So maybe I want to write a check. I know I'm going to, I know there's an audit trail. I know I'm going to get a felony for it, but really right now, I don't want to be with those 3 guys in that hotel room. So I'm going to do that. And that's what happens over and over and over. Pick me to do the crime all day. I don't want to have sex. I don't want to do it. But sometimes you have to. And a lot of times I did. So we get these felonies, but we're not going to stop. We're not dying on the vine. So I got 3. So this is the good news. I got 3 out of my 4 expunged in the last year. I have 1 left, and that should be coming. I don't even know what I'm going to do, Kristy, when I'm not a felon anymore. It's been it's been who I was for so long, and it's given me some street cred with some of the grantors, but whatever. I'll say I was the felon. But no, so these are kinds of things. Bail reform groups, I'm invited to the table. Probation, and probation and parole violation, coming to the table to give voice, to lend voice to policy and protocol. But another thing we need as survivors is jobs. We need jobs. You Rotarians, some of you own businesses, you work at organizations, hire us, please. Now, we can work on some job skill sets. You know, we can go through the interview process with our folks. We can hook up with agencies on, you know, career readiness and stuff like that, but hire us. Hire us. That's what we need. We need folks to come alongside us and give us jobs. Housing. So folks that might have, I know that Veronica's Voice right now is in the process of acquiring a home that will be used for the programming, which is fantastic. And that's a very, very, very good start. What it's going to cost some money to run that home. I have an emergency shelter next door, and it has to be run 365, 24/7. So just at $18 an hour, which is pretty low in the Twin Cities, that's $166,000 without perks and benefits. That's how much that costs. So the funding we get from the Department of Health, which is Safe Harbor for youth, is $60,000 a year. 60. Mm-hmm. And so there's a huge shortfall there, but it's needed. In fact, my board wants to shut it down because it doesn't make sense financially, but I have to bring people in to explain that we have to have it whether it makes sense financially or not, because it's a need. It is a need. So housing, jobs, and then other kinds of services. We're talking about, you know, many of us, we were in the life, we were felons. We're not necessarily licensed social workers. So we need other folks to come alongside us. So different kinds of folks that have different modalities to come alongside with the chemical health and the mental illness. We're seeing a large amount of psychosis coming through, and I would imagine you're seeing it in Kansas City as well. Yeah. So you get people with autism, you get folks with bipolar, schizophrenia, and then a little bit of meth use on top of that. And, you know, you've got 10 or 12, you know, chips in our head, people at the door, hypervigilant, you know, losing, you know, all that. What do you do? Where do you put someone like that?
And then Terry, I'm just going to pause you because you're sharing such good information, and we want to unpack so much of this, right? So, okay. So I think what you're hearing from Terry are just a series of challenges, you know, that she is sharing are experienced and common to survivors. And you heard issues of the need for expungement and felonies on records and family support and housing and so much of this. And we're going to come back to it. We're going to come back to how can this be supported. So we have problems, but there are solutions. Okay. So this is, and we can all participate in that. So I'm going to come back to that because I do want to open the floor and just open that Pandora's box for everybody to chime in on here. But before we do, I do want to welcome Kristy to the floor for a moment as well. So Terry, thank you. We'll be having you come right back in here in a second. But Kristy, would you please take some moments here and share, just introduce yourself, whatever you'd like to share, and the work of Veronica's Voice, and just what's your why behind all that you have been pioneering these last couple of decades or more.
Thank you. So I founded Veronica's Voice because, you know, I was in the life from the age of 12 to 36. It was near to impossible to get out. And it was just really a miracle that I did. During this time, I had a friend by the name of Veronica Neverdusky who was murdered. She had just turned 21 that week, and I was like 30-ish. I think 31. And I had met her in 1988 when I came back to Kansas City. So a lot of my time in the life was in other cities around the country. And I met her in 1988, and she was out on the streets, and she started talking to me. And she followed me around a lot. I didn't really want to get involved. I had taken a beating from a pimp in Alaska for helping a young girl escape. And I mean, I was young myself at that time. I was like 21. This girl was like 15. She wanted to go back home to her family. I bought her a plane ticket, swooped her up off the corner in front of her stable sister, which means this is someone else that's with the same pimp. So it was known who came and got her. And I didn't want to get involved with Veronica. I didn't know who she was attached to and what that could bring for me. So she would just follow me around and talk nonstop. Like, this kid talked a lot. And she shared with me why she was in the situation she was in out on the streets here in Kansas City. And I was like, ding, ding, ding. This is me all over again. How many other women and girls have I met all these years that have the same background? So that was like my first kind of aha, oh my gosh, we've all had this sexual abuse happen to us. We've all come from these situations that aren't pretty. And so ultimately, her surviving on the streets in Kansas City led to her murder. And like I said, she was murdered the week she turned 21. I continued. I was on my way out. My miracle had taken place, and I could see the hope and the vision to move to get myself out of the life. And so there wasn't anywhere to turn for help, like to be honest and be like, oh my gosh, I've been what society calls a prostitute all these years, because back then, sex trafficking wasn't even a terminology that was used. So, yeah, I just kept moving, and I utilized different things that were in place, different programs, different aids that were available through social services, and lifted myself out of prostitution. And the sad thing was, I had to prostitute myself out of prostitution in the process of the change. So I was like, I want to do something so that women don't have to do this, that they don't have to prostitute themselves to get out. First and foremost, if they don't even have the hope, they can't even move through that. They are just surviving moment by moment. And when you are in a war zone where you are constantly jumping in and out of strangers' cars, and nowadays this is really, a lot of it's moved to the internet, it's more behind the scenes, you don't know what you're walking into. You're still in these deadly life or death situations. You're just surviving, and you can't see beyond this moment. And so I just really wanted to create something for women that they could get out. And I wanted to educate the community on what this really was. This was exploitation. This was violence. And I knew people didn't understand the issue. No one was talking about it. So when I started Veronica's Voice, I named it after Veronica. One, she was like the first person that really made me have this aha of, me and these other women and girls, we've got these commonalities that have led us to this place. And two, for all the women throughout history who have been misunderstood and labeled prostitute, which is not who we are. That's something we've had to do, but it's not who we are. And I just really wanted to shine the light on that. And so those are my whys, and that's why I do what I do. And I am a survivor who now thrives in my own life. And, it wasn't an easy journey, and there wasn't a community of support around me. And we need to have that for survivors, because as Terry was saying, there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of stigma from the community. Now, one of the biggest challenges, I know we're not really going into that at this moment, but this term trafficking has really created this division between victims. So we want to have good victims over here, and we want to have whores over here. These people are sellable, and we allow that. Why would we allow that? People should not be for sale. Compromising yourself sexually to have your basic human needs met should never be in any society and any culture. So that terminology has caused harm, and it's caused harm when we have different entities that teach on those things. I felt like when I started Veronica's Voice, I was super naive in some ways. And this was that way. I believed if I got out there and shared my story and shined the light on the reality of what this is, people would get it, especially women. I mean, like, women were going to get this, they were going to get behind this, they were going to understand this, and they were going to help support us. And it's unfortunately not a lot of what was happening. People heard it, they wanted to start their own stuff. People heard it, they wanted to, have a religious focus on it. It was just, and then people heard it and they were like, well, that's not human trafficking, that's like this. And so I was doing a lot of community education and trying to do cleanup behind what other people, what we in the life would call squares, have heard, and they've taken this and now then they've made it into this, which goes along with what the Department of Justice did to create whores and good victims. So that has been harmful.
Yeah. No, thank you so much for sharing that, Kristy. And, I want everyone to understand, you're hearing from women who have been at this now for over 2 decades, of their life being advocates, and they're they're just pulling from a deep well, of obviously their own experiences, but just pioneering these efforts to try to provide support, try to express the reality of the situation. I guess we as humans just like boxes. I've never really understood it. We like clean lines between things. We like, all of these sort of extremes, when so much of the time the situation is just incredibly complex, layered, compounding vulnerabilities. And sometimes I guess maybe we're overwhelmed by that, but I see it as a world of opportunity to engage, to walk alongside families that are hurting, to walk alongside kiddos who are in foster care or aging out with no one, to walk alongside women who desperately need not just a picture of hope, but the opportunity to seize on it and all the support that they need to get there, and just people to walk alongside them, or to provide the support to those who are equipped and able and should be the ones walking alongside them. So I'm going to open the floor now to Lucy, Terry, and Kristy to join all of us. Lucy, are we able to spotlight 4 all at the same time? Get everybody on the screen?
Let me see.
She's so techie.
Because what we would like to do, there you go.
Look at you, ladies.
Hey, there we go. And can you spotlight yourself so you're here too? There you go. Perfect. So now we're going to kind of go popcorn topics here. This is going to be tough. I'm just going to go ahead because we have like 25 minutes left to cover a world and a wealth of some knowledge here, but we're going to try. So let's start by unpacking just a little bit more challenges. So what are just the very real challenges from all of your perspectives on what's not going well right now and what needs to change? So we'll sit on that for about 7 minutes, and then we're going to move to progress and successes. Okay. So whoever would like to speak first, go for it.
Okay, what's not going well?
Yes.
As far as I'm concerned, change takes so long, and unfortunately, we lose lives in that process. I've been at this, like you said, over 2 decades, and we've lost a lot of lives, and we still continue to have that separation of who's a victim. I would like to see where women call in that need help, that, like with the DV shelter, they call the DV line. If they have a bed, they can get in. They're not saying, well, do you have someone to prosecute? Oh, well, then we can't help you. Like, that to me is a criminal in and of itself. We don't care. Breaking Free, Veronica's Voice, places like ours, we don't care if you have a case. That is irrelevant to you getting the care and assistance that you need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's good. What Kristy's discussing there, by the way, for those who don't understand it, is there are barriers to accessing even simple basic services, usually driven by the funding mechanisms of your local and state and even federal governments. So that's a reforms issue, right? We need to open up those services without having a checklist of things that have nothing to do with helping that person in that moment. right? So that's what Kristy is talking about. We could talk for a whole day on that. I won't.
Yeah.
So yes, go ahead, Terry.
Oh, hold on. So are you saying that you would have to have a case against somebody in order to get the services?
Yeah,
Yes.
sometimes, Patty. Yeah.
Yes.
Sometimes,
Yes.
or in the case of a DV shelter, you would need to identify your abuser as an intimate partner.
Yeah. 'Cause some services are contingent on, this is where a lot of your victim advocate programs sit, because they're there to successfully prosecute an offender. So they're supporting, but they're playing a supporting role for the victim for the purposes of a successful prosecution. And sometimes they incentivize that. They probably wouldn't use that phrase, but they're incentivizing participation in that by also saying you're not allowed to access services unless you participate in this. And it's been a battle federally and in state levels. Terry, go ahead. I know you had a thought you were trying to share.
Yeah, so in Minnesota, same thing, Kristy and everyone, but with the domestic shelters, if we're involved in prostitution, they don't want us there because they figure that there's going to be harm from the perpetrator. Well, what about and for all intents and purposes, it is domestic violence because it is my pimp that's doing this.
It's domestic violence to the 100th power.
Girl, say that. That's what it is. So, but our violence doesn't matter. Ours is not recognized as domestic. So the shelters are close to us. And this is what's been happening with Breaking Free for years. And that's one of the reasons why we opened our own shelter. Then you were talking about something, Kristy, about barrier, another barrier. We expect people to have warrants when they come here. We expect people to have charges. We're not the ones. We're not calling on them. We're going to help them. We're going to work with them. We work very closely with the BCA and the St. Paul Police Department and everything. There's a lot of violence in Minnesota since George Floyd murders. I've had 3 guns in my face in 6 months. I'm an ED. So can you imagine other people? There's a lot of stuff that's going on out there. So we just want to make sure that those barriers are kept to a minimum. We'll work with the police. We will go to the police station with you. We will go to court with you because we're tired of pleading. We're tired of pleading for something we didn't do just so we don't have to spend a couple more days in jail, And why are you letting us out at 3:00 in the morning? When it's only perpetrators there? Why are you letting us out with a check where we don't have any money or a phone to call an Uber or get transportation? So it's all these barriers. I'm 60 years old, y'all. I still have 1 felony. Now, is this my fault? Yes, it's because choices I made, but I cannot get into housing without a co-signer and a lot of other things. If I would have to get another job somewhere, they'd have to consider my background. So these are challenges and they're real, y'all. They are real.
Yeah. And this is that part of, these really complex situations that there are solutions for. Okay. So there are solutions, but it requires us to carefully consider and listen to people who have gone through this in your communities to say, what were the barriers? And why were there barriers? Why did that happen? And who's in charge of fixing that particular piece of the puzzle so that we can open that wide for success? And these initial barriers and long-term barriers, you've heard both, really impede progress.
And there's many barriers.
There's
many just different systems that need to be, I don't even know what to say they need. I mean, I've tried to work in those areas and yeah, they may want you at the table, so they can say, oh, we have a survivor at the table. But what does that mean?
Right.
So what? You just want to exploit my thoughts and my information and twist it to what you want it to be instead of including and listening, really listening and implementing what we're saying is important. And that's the problem. We're used as like the token survivor voice. And instead of really being listened to, it's really difficult, I think, for someone who hasn't had these experiences to identify with us.
Right.
And I get that. We want you, though, to put yourself in our shoes and I wish there was some kind of an immersion kind of what do they call those, where you can walk through it and not actually walk through it, but where you could really kind of experience that in such a way where you could go, oh my gosh, I see how difficult this is.
Mhm.
Assimilation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that, because it's not easy, and it's so easy to drive by people and go, why didn't he just get a job? Why don't she just do this? And that it's just not easy like that. And we see that even still with domestic violence. Why doesn't she just leave? There's just so many other things that go into these situations.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, Kristy, and this is when I get really frustrated. Okay, so in Kansas City, down by your bus station, when I was on my way to Memphis, that's where I'd go to get my crack. All right, that's where it's going to be. It's going to be there. You go get it. So let's say somebody, any one of us on this call, gets dropped off a block from down there by the bus station with no wallet, no phone, nothing. We come and pick you up in 24 hours. How do you suppose you would handle that?
Mhm.
How could you survive for 24 hours down by that bus station without any money, without anything else, without knowing anyone? You might not even have enough clothes on to stay warm. That's what we feel like all the time. And those barriers are a gun at my head. Those barriers are, I better get back home. Otherwise, something's going to happen because I'm the money maker. So understand that we are money makers. We bring in a lot of money every day. If we are gone, if we are disposed of, if we are locked up or whatever, we're still going to get beat up because we were taken off the streets, or we may have to work extra hard to get that money because now we're one less day at Extended Stay America or wherever we're going.
And so she's
So-
referring to being the money maker of a stable, of
Yeah.
like with a pimp. So that pimp is looking at us as we are this commodity for him, and we have to have a certain amount of money for him. And if we are taken out of commission, there's a price to be paid.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
But even if it wasn't a stable, Kristy, if it was just a lover boy,
That's
same
true.
thing.
You're
Same
right.
thing,
You're right.
even if you have to come up with that money, and therein lies those low hanging fruit. There comes the felonies and everything. So if you look at my record, which is very extensive, you look at from when I was first exploited and then when I got out of the life, and everything is within that time frame. So we're looking at expungements and what's the other, vacatur, stuff like that. So those are things we can do, but understand that those felonies we have, don't worry about it when you're hiring us. These are situational. These are things that happen. But then, I can vote again. I can't carry a gun and stuff. And yeah, no, it's just we're
Well,
still not treated like.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go there. Let's talk about progress that you guys are seeing, vacatur, expungement. What are things that you're seeing in Kansas or nationally that excite you about where we need to go next and what is happening? We've got a well of barriers that we've illuminated. What are some progress, that you're excited about today, or even pioneering?
So,
Trying to
my
push.
progress personally is I'm in a different position in Veronica's voice. So I am more engaged with the women we serve that live in our home. And we're looking for a building so that we can expand our services and also have take all of our services that we do within their home out of their home. So that's just where they live, and have them there at the center. And so that's progress for me, because I'm in a much happier position in my own life, and being able to work with the gals. Working with lawmakers and all that is not my cup of tea, as I banged my head long enough. So Lucy, I'm going to let you speak to what you're excited for in that realm.
Yeah, and some of the progress that has been made in Kansas, our victims of crime assistance funds have identified human trafficking survivors as people who are commercially sexually exploited, and they do not require a case. They don't require that person to press charges or anything for them to receive services. The amount of those services is a small amount, but it is a beginning. And there are several domestic violence shelters that have accessed a portion of that funding so that they can, but it's kind of a shoehorn fit.
Mhm.
But there is a human trafficking advisory board here, and your Terry mentioned some of the efforts there in Minnesota that has been looking at how do we continue to build out services. So it's progress while still, you know, in the fray. Some of our challenges with the pandemic is as we do not have expanded Medicaid in Missouri, in Kansas, forgive me, in Kansas. So even other women that are coming here for our services, because our house remained open, so we still had beds. Other people were coming here from states where they had medical care available and they don't here. So trying to create access to healthcare has been a challenge. We taking on the challenge of, as other services are having to kind of pull back because of the difficulties with the pandemic. Well, the needs of our women did not pull back, they increased actually. Yeah. So that's what kind of drove us into providing even more in-house and creative, creating some innovative ways to create those partnerships. So we actually got grants to fund professionals who could come work with our women. So, so building your program, that way, you're always having to go back and look at, okay, but then how do we continue to, as we're expanding, how do we take care of the organization as well? So those of you that are in business and you have grown businesses, diversified businesses, you have skills and experience that would be very helpful to us, because this is kind of our present state. At the national level, we have seen we've seen strides to move forward with the equality model, not successfully on a large scale, but at a community level, we have. And even as we've talked with those partners, you all will see from a prior webinar that we did on demand reduction, you'll hear from experts in King County, Washington, and they have come back to me and said, as we have tried to help other communities do what we did, we've realized all of the problems and challenges and how fortunate we are, because we were actually willing to think outside the box and to try it this way. And and so continuing to encourage all of our people that are our judges, our prosecutors, our any elected official, to kind of think outside this box and could we just even pilot it? Let's try it. We're needing that will here in this local community in Kansas City Metro. We're needing that will to let's try it, let's test it, let's put aside all of the reasons why not and look at how can. And so that that's a continual challenge as you're creating a specialized service that has to be shoehorned in, to everything else. And how do you fund that? Because we can't access the same funding streams that mainstream services can access.
Yeah. So such good stuff there, Lucy. Thank you. Terry, did you have some thoughts on?
Yeah, just to quantify what Lucy's saying in the discussion here. So actually COVID really helped us out a lot, breaking free in Minnesota, because we were able to get about $300,000 more than we would normally have gotten. And then PPP. So PPP saved me and my staff last year and this year, which was wonderful, but I might not have been able to have that many staff to help. The other thing is I want to let you know, we spent $34,000 on hotels last year. And that wasn't helping everyone. That was helping a lot of folks because of COVID. Everyone would need 2 weeks somewhere. And then in addition to that, you don't just leave them in a hotel. You got to come there every day and provide them food, make sure that their temperature, that they're okay. So it's a lot of work and a lot of money that is required to do the work that Kristy and Lucy have to do in Kansas City. One other thing though, I want to mention that's getting a little better that I'm seeing out there is, like Kristy mentioned earlier, people weren't even talking about prostitution years ago. They didn't want to talk about it. Then they implemented that word trafficking, and none of us knew what that was in the life. You know, we still don't usually use that. We don't use that word either. But people are wanting to hear our voices. And there were times, it took me years to realize this, that I was only on a panel because they had pre-designed my narrative and I had to sign off for it, and they could get that grant saying that they had a survivor. Well, that I'm not falling for that anymore. Took me a while, maybe I'm a little slow, but now I'm on committees where they're actually taking notes and they have to make some changes. But one of the things I'm doing, Kristy, and I'm finding that's really effective, is I'm bringing pimps into the mix too. If you want to learn about this, you're going to listen to this pimp. You're going to listen to how he was groomed and what his role was and what he goes through to get us to do what we do. This is a community thing. We got to start at this from the beginning. The pimps I talk to, and I'm not saying they're survivors by any means. That's not where I'm coming. But if we want to resolve this and we want to affect change, we got to find out what's going on in those little 15, 16-year-old boys and girls' heads. So maybe I'm thinking I'm going to protect my folks, you know, and I'm going to talk to the police, and I'm going to do this and that. But what are those images? What are those messages? What's going on in their head to dispel that, to let other boys know, to bring this to schools, to have these conversations, that this is how this happens. Have the girls hear it too. Oh God, okay, I can see where they're coming from. But this is the reality in my world. If you are not smart, if you don't have an education, if you're not a singer, if you're not this and that, you're going to be a drug dealer, you're going to try to survive, you're going to try to do this, that, your aunties, your uncles are doing it, music, TV, radio, everything's normalized.
A lot of influence. Yeah.
Yeah. But at least people, I think, are ready to hear from the pimps. Maybe not everyone.
To address a toxic masculinity, you know, you have to have the healthy masculinity to compare it to and teach them this is what this looks like. And that's what's so heartbreaking about, like, in Kansas City, we're not getting our John School in, like all these other places. And of course, I brought it from San Francisco, from Normus, out at Sage back in 2000, right? And it's never worked and been implemented the way it needs to. Well, now our John School, which has been expanded, Lucy maybe can speak on this, it's called something different, but it goes into so much more. It's like 10 weeks long. It's, you know, it's beneficial to our community to hear these things, and for men to have this education, and for healthy men to help implement like that within our culture to other men that aren't healthy, that have this toxic. But then we see so much on TV and in the music industry. So there are tools out here. I mean, just like, for instance, that's one solution, is to have that implemented here in Kansas City and other cities where this can be hit. You hit them with the education, right? So we're not trying to shame the men that are buying women. We're trying to tell them, look, dude, it's not okay. This is where these women come from. This isn't healthy masculinity, and just all those things that can be taught. So I think that's one solution. I also think everybody can go to our website and sign on to our petition, find out more about the equality model. You know, this is where we look at the issue and we say, we're going to stop arresting these women. We're going to put resources towards helping these women, meaning funds available to help these women. We're going to go after the men that exploit them, either sexually or financially, because they're both abuses. And that's where the law enforcement focus, that's where the court focus needs to be on there. So I think there's two solutions right there.
Yeah, I love it. And if you've missed our conversation on demand, we unpacked that so much, everyone. So a good opportunity to go back and listen in on the pieces of that puzzle and that program and why we need to expand it. So thank you, Kristy. All right, we have just a couple of more moments. I know we've got some questions from our folks. I'm going to ask everyone to hang back after we stop recording so you can ask those questions and we can have some good conversations for a few minutes. But before we stop recording and we kind of end the official session, Terry, Lucy, Kristy, wish lists. So what's your biggest wish coming into now and this next year that you would hope communities will take hold of and run with? So what's your biggest 1, 2, maybe 3 things you wish were true now and you hope will come true soon?
Mine would be, speaking as an executive director, but mine would be, as you're considering what you can do this year end, look at the survivor-led organizations in your community, give them a call. I put my phone number in here. Give them a call, find out what their immediate needs are and how you and the organizations you're part of, the company you work for, can come in and help support those here at the year end. Because we're so focused right now on the women out there who are cold. And you know what I mean? Like our in the trenches is up. We've had new gals come into our residential program last week. Like we're all very, very busy. So you guys can come in and really help us make sure we finish this year strong.
Yeah, absolutely. So good.
I'd like to grow our sustainers circle, which is people that give on a monthly basis. I would like to see that grow like over the next 3 years to include 5,000 more people that become sustainers. And you know, people are like, oh my gosh, well, I can't give. It doesn't matter. I mean, how much it is something we can depend on. So if it's $5 a month, it's $5 that we have that we know this is a sustainer and this person has joined with us and they are pouring into us every month. We can count on that, you know, and I'd like to see that happen, as well as I would like to see more people get involved in some of the heavy lifting with law enforcement, with having that voice to take there to really push this. What's it called, Lucy? Now I always call it John School. What's it called now?
Stopping Sexual Exploitation.
Okay.
Program from in.
Yeah,
it's based off of a national best practice.
Yeah, to get that put in. And because we saw this big thing from the Attorney General over here about stopping demand. And you know, hey, they spent a lot of money on it. And I don't know that anything really happened. So you know, I'm just tired of seeing those things happening. You know, I really want to see some motion moving forward. We get that in place. 1, we're educating men in our community. 2, it's helping sustain our organization where we are helping those that they've caused harm to. So I'd like to see that. I'd like to see people that have different talents that have something to offer us, like an accountant that maybe that could offer to pro bono our audit every other year. We could pay them 1 year, the next year they could do it pro bono. We would love that. Those are things that are so helpful to us. So there's lots of different things I want to see, but I will move on. Not take it from everybody.
Yeah, so many opportunities. I hope everyone hears to help. Terry, what's on your wish list?
Yeah, everything for Veronica's voice, everything that they said. I also know that we have had people that have come alongside Breaking Free survivors and offered spa days. So a spa day for Kristy and Lucy and their staff, just coming in, having a lunch, sponsoring a luncheon. Yeah, no, seriously. Yeah. Maybe make some candles, make a craft, do a couple, you know, whatever, self-help things, but have that, you know, at least quarterly, you have to do that for your staff and let them know that you're lifting them up. Another thing for your clients and for their kiddos and stuff, maybe some of the Rotarians or someone in the community could take them to a Royals game. We do that. We go to the Twins game. It's fun to get our kiddos out there, get them excited, maybe coach them, work with some of the people in the community to bring our kids up in a healthy environment. Talk to you have a good music school. Talk to the folks to see if they can come at your at the University of Kansas. I think you do, Kristy. I know you're right. You're like Minneapolis, St. Paul too. You got Kansas and
right.
Mm.
in Missouri there. So same with us here. We got different things going on in the different counties and whatnot. But just reach out, invest in us as survivors, invest in our children. The biggest thing we can do right now is take a look at, we call them our littles, our children that we have. What is that secondary trauma? What happens to them? Invest in that so that they don't have to go through. My kids are 19, 26, and 30. I figure since they're not in the life, they're not prostituting, and no one's got a huge heroin addict, that they're fine. No, they might not be fine. You know, there's things that we got to talk about, work out. So just invest financially, invest with your time, treasures, and talent. Anything you can do to lift up these wonderful people in Kansas City would be terrific. Lots of opportunities.
So good. And ask, okay, you know, people who are in direct services in your communities have needs. And it is a lot to ask them to be constantly knocking on doors to meet those needs. So ask, call, proactively call, and you'll get a wish list, you know, from every direct service provider in your city, and just rally to meet them. So thank you, everybody. We'll stay online if you want to. Lucy, I'll hand it to you for the final comments before we stop recording.
Yes, thank you all for attending, and please do check out the website veronicasvoice.org/Rotary-Swarm. This has been sponsored by Lenexa and Leawood Rotary Clubs. On January 19th, this session will be dedicated to them presenting their action plan that they have created in response to this series. And there is also an opportunity to complete Engage Together Justice University. It is about a 4-hour online course that you receive a certification for. And we all have been taking that course because it'll help us all to be on the same page as we dialogue about this. And we have coupons. You'll see all the information on the website, but you can access that course for free, and you can share it with others for them to also access it while those last. Again, so that you can, you know, if you're not comfortable sitting down having the conversation, you can say, but over this break, could you carve out 4 hours just to complete this course? It's not 4 hours in one sitting. You can do several sittings, and you can leave it and then come back and finish, even if you're in the middle of one and you get interrupted. So really, really encourage you all to participate in that. For all of you that have friends and family in freezing Minnesota, please tell them about Breaking Free. It's a fantastic organization there. And again, Minnesota has been leading the way. And Kansas has been watching what they do policy-wise for many, many years. And again, they are the only state in the union that has removed the age discrimination from their definition of what is commercial sexual exploitation, and they've created the bridge to what is sex trafficking through their safe harbor law. So that was what led me to really want Terry to be part of this today, because as Kristy is a phenomenal example, so is Terry. And thank you both ladies for taking your time to be here. It was a huge honor to get to hear what you'd have to share.